Quantifiers. A quantifier is a word that usually goes before a noun to express the quantity of the object. For example, a little. Most quantifiers are followed by a noun, though it is also possible to use them without the noun when it is clear what we are referring to. Okay? So the idea that you had yesterday, okay, is completely correct. Quantifier means quantity, amount, numbers. So it's completely correct.
They are much, many, lots of, a lot of, few, a little, little, some, and any. But before I get to the quantifiers, I have to talk about countable and uncountable nouns. I made a video earlier about nouns, and I discussed what a countable and an uncountable noun was. And to determine which quantifier to use, you have to know if the noun that you are describing a quantity for is a countable noun or an uncountable noun. Let's look at the examples. In the first set of examples, we have the countable noun apple. Okay, apple is a countable noun. We can count apples. So in the first sentence, there is an apple on the tree. This is another way to say there is one apple on the tree. In the second example, there are apples on the tree. We can count them, so we can add an S and say that there are apples on the tree. There are more than one apple on the tree. All right, so countable nouns, we can make them plural. In this particular case, I just added S to apple to make it plural, but other countable nouns have other ways to make them plural, which, again, look at my video on nouns if you're a little bit unsure right now. Okay, so let's go to the next set of examples with uncountable nouns. In this case, we're talking about sand. Sand is what we call a mass noun. A mass noun is a group of something, and we count a group as one, so they're singular. For example, number 3 here, there is sand on the beach. You see, it's counted as one, sand, okay? And we would never say, like number 4, there are sands on the beach. We can't pluralize it. We can't add the S, all right? So if you can determine if the noun is a countable noun or an uncountable noun, you'll be able to use quantifiers with no problem whatsoever. And the first one we're going to look at is the quantifier much. Much is used to determine the quantity of uncountable nouns, and it's usually used in questions and in negative sentences. Let's look at the first example. Number 1, how much ice cream do you want? Here, much is describing or determining the amount of ice cream. Ice cream is an uncountable noun, so we use much, right? We can't count ice cream. Remember, it's one of those mass nouns, a group. It's counted as a group. And in the second example, you don't have much time before the bus leaves. Here, this is a negative sentence. We're talking about you don't have enough time. And time, in this example, in this particular use of time, it is uncountable. So we use much. All right, time is counted by how? It's counted by minutes and seconds and hours. Those things you can count, but time, the way it's used here, you can't count it. So we use much. All right, now let's look at many. Many is used with plural countable nouns. It's mainly used in questions and negative sentences. Similar to much, it's a large quantity of something. But many is the alternative to much because many quantifies countable nouns, like in the first example. Number 1, how many cookies do you want? Cookie is a countable noun. I can count cookies. 1, 2, 3. In the second example, you'll see it. There aren't many cars on the highway today. All right? So many means a large quantity. So if we say that there aren't many, we mean there are not a lot of cars on the highway. Okay? Cars, car, countable noun. That's how you know which one to use. Now let's look at a lot of and lots of. This should be very easy for everyone, okay? Because they're used with uncountable and plural countable nouns. They're usually used in positive sentences and like much and many, they are used to quantify large amounts. So, in the first example, we have there is a lot of bread on the table. Bread? Is bread a countable or an uncountable noun? Uncountable noun. We can also say, number 2, there is lots of bread on the table. They both mean the same exact thing. So you can use a lot of or lots of with uncountable nouns. All right? And look at number 3 and 4. Let's do 3 first. There are a lot of windows in that house. Window is a countable noun, so we can pluralize it, right? We put the S on this in this case. There are a lot of windows. And number 4, there are lots of windows in that house. 3 and 4 mean the same exact thing. You can use a lot of and lots of. Next, we're going to look at few and a few. And they're used with plural countable nouns. And they usually mean a small amount or quantity of something. Let's look at the examples. In the first one, few students walk to school in the country. When few is used like this, in this particular sentence, the emphasis is on the small amount of students who walk to school in the country. In example number 2, we have a few students walk to school in the country. In this case, the emphasis is on, well, there are a small amount of students that actually walk to school, but there are at least some students that walk. So 1 is implying that there are a small amount, maybe in a negative way. And then in number 2, a few students is saying that, well, I know there's a small amount, but some students do walk to school. Okay? Now, you have to be careful, all right? Because there's an exception to this. If you put quite in front of a few, it changes everything. Let's look at the example. Quite a few students walk to school in the country. In this sentence, it means that many students. Quite a few means many. So you see the big change? So that one little word quite will change the whole meaning of the sentence. So you can still use it. Just remember what it means. Okay? Now we're going to look at little and a little. Little and a little are used with uncountable nouns, and they usually mean a small amount or a small quantity of something. All right? Let's look at the examples. We had little time to prepare for the test. Now, in this sentence, we had little time. This means that we had maybe not any time at all. This means a very, very small amount or no time to do it, to prepare. And in number 2, you can really see the difference here. We had a little time to prepare for the test. This also means a small amount of time, but it's saying, well, I know it's a small amount, but it was still some time. You see how different it is from the first one? In the first example, we had little time. It means small amount or no time to do it. And then the second one, we had a little time, which actually means we had some time, but it was only a small amount. All right, got it? Now let's look at how some is used. Some is used with both countable and uncountable nouns. It's used in positive sentences. It's used when we're offering something, and it's used with requests. Let's look at the first one. Number 1, he has some friends with him. All right, friend is a countable noun. So we can use some with countable noun. It's positive, right? He has some friends. Number 2, he bought some iced tea for his friends. Now, iced tea is an uncountable noun. You see, but we can still use some. So it can be used with countable and uncountable nouns. In number 3, we have an offering. Would you like some coffee? Here we're using some for the person is offering, if the other person wants something to drink. And in number 4, we have a request. Could I borrow some money, please? Now, some is used other ways in English, but these are pretty common ways. Now, let's do the final quantifier, which is going to be any. Any is used with both countable and uncountable nouns, and it's usually used in negative sentences and questions. Let's look at the examples. In the first sentence, number 1, she doesn't have any friends at this school. This is implying it's a negative, right? She doesn't have friends. And again, it's a countable noun. Friends, right? Friend is a countable noun. Number 2, there isn't any milk left in the refrigerator. Another negative, right? There is no milk. Milk is uncountable. And in the third example, we have a question. Is there any money in your bank account? This is a neutral question, right? It's not a negative or it's not a positive. It's just, the person is just asking. Is there any? All right, and that's how it's used.
Wow, I can't find a flaw in his logic.